The small town of Blackwood sits nestled in the foggy valleys of northern Pennsylvania, where autumn leaves seem to linger longer than anywhere else in America. Here, in the shadow of rolling hills, stands St. Agnes Convent, a stone structure built in 1872 that has watched over the town like a silent guardian. In December 1989, 8 nuns entered the chapel for a midnight vigil, a tradition they had maintained for decades. By morning, all 8 had vanished without a trace. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, no footprints in the fresh snow that had fallen that night. The investigation file, finally unsealed after 30 years, contains over 400 pages of interviews, theories, and dead ends. Local authorities questioned 76 townspeople, brought in 3 separate K-9 units, and even employed psychics at the desperate request of the families. The case was eventually classified as unresolved and shelved away, becoming nothing more than occasional whispers among Blackwood residents. Sister Margaret's journal, discovered behind a loose brick in the convent's kitchen in 2005, contains a troubling entry dated 2 weeks before the disappearance. Sister Agnes believes she hears voices from beneath the chapel floor. Mother Superior forbids any mention of it, but Agnes cannot sleep. None of us can ignore the soft tapping sounds anymore. Are you brave enough to discover what truly happened in that chapel? The answer wasn't found in police reports or newspaper clippings. It was buried 6 feet beneath sacred ground, behind a door that should have remained sealed. What those 8 women discovered wasn't a miracle or a divine message. It was something far more tangible and infinitely more dangerous. Winter in Blackwood has always been harsh. By early December, the roads become treacherous, and the convent sits isolated on its hill, surrounded by dense woods. The winds that sweep across the valley carry whispers that seem almost human, a phenomenon locals had attributed to the unique geography. In 1989, St. Agnes Convent housed 12 nuns, led by Mother Superior Catherine Harlow, a stern woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. The remaining 4 nuns who weren't present during the fateful vigil would later describe her as increasingly paranoid in the weeks before the disappearance. The convent itself was a place of contradictions, stone walls that offered both protection and imprisonment, stained glass windows that transformed sunlight into kaleidoscopic displays while obscuring the view of what lay beyond. The basement level, rarely used except for storage, maintained a constant temperature regardless of season, a fact that architectural engineers would later find inconsistent with the building's documented construction. The town of Blackwood had always maintained a complicated relationship with the convent. While the sisters provided education and community support, there remained an unspoken distance. They kept to themselves, recalled former Mayor Richard Tanner. Even during town festivals, they'd appear briefly, then return to their hill. Mother Superior Catherine always seemed vigilant, like she was protecting something. In the late 1980s, this part of Pennsylvania was experiencing an economic downturn. The coal industry that had sustained generations was failing, and with it came increasing tensions. Young people were leaving, while those who remained clung to tradition and faith with increasing desperation. The Sisters of St. Agnes represented stability in uncertain times. Their disappearance shattered what little security the community still possessed. Thomas Miller, then a 17-year-old who lived on the property adjoining the convent grounds, was the first to notice something amiss. Unable to sleep on that December night, he watched from his bedroom window as the lights in the chapel burned well past midnight, unusual even for a scheduled vigil. Around 2:30 a.m., he observed a blue glow emanating from the chapel windows, like nothing I'd ever seen before. Not electric light, something colder. What happened next has been disputed in various accounts. Miller claims the light intensified until the stained glass seemed ready to shatter. Then, suddenly, darkness, complete and absolute. Even the security light that always illuminated the convent's entrance had gone out. Concerned, he woke his father, who dismissed it as a power outage and told him to go back to sleep. But there was something about the quality of that darkness, Miller would later tell investigators. It wasn't just the absence of light, it felt hungry. This description was redacted from official reports, deemed unhelpful to the investigation. By morning, when Sister Rebecca Collins returned from her hospital chaplaincy night shift, she found the chapel doors locked from the inside. After gaining entry through a side window, she discovered the chapel empty, but with evidence of an interrupted vigil. 8 prayer books lay open on the pews, 8 candles had burned down to nothing, and in the center of the altar, a perfect circle of what appeared to be condensation marked the stone floor. The image that Sister Rebecca couldn't erase from her mind, that followed her into dreams for years afterward, wasn't the missing women or the locked doors, it was the small porcelain figurine of the Virgin Mary on the altar. Its face, previously turned toward the congregation, was now facing the wall. As if, she whispered during her 3rd police interview, it couldn't bear to look at what had happened in that room. Within hours, the disappearance transformed Blackwood. State police established a command center in the town hall. Volunteer search parties combed the surrounding woods despite the bitter cold. Local news crews arrived by noon, followed by larger networks by evening. The remaining 4 nuns were separated and questioned repeatedly, their statements revealing small but significant inconsistencies. Sister Rebecca mentioned hearing rumors of renovation plans for the chapel, plans that Mother Superior had not shared with the diocese. Sister Teresa recalled Mother Superior spending hours in the convent's small library, researching local history with particular interest in the land before the convent was built. Sister Josephine spoke of strange deliveries in the months prior, building materials that were taken directly to the basement. Sister Mary, the youngest at only 26, broke down during her 3rd interview, repeating only, "She found something in the archives. She found something they'd hidden." As weeks passed without leads, the media's attention wandered elsewhere. Search parties dwindled, then disbanded. The diocese sent a temporary administrator, Father Lawrence Mackenzie, to maintain the convent's operations while the investigation continued. His private letters to the bishop, uncovered years later, express increasing unease. Something is wrong with this building. The remaining sisters avoid certain areas. At night, the silence here isn't peaceful, it's expectant. I've begun to wonder if we're waiting for their return, or for something else entirely. By spring, the case had grown cold. The prevailing theory suggested the nuns had left voluntarily, perhaps disillusioned with their vocation or in protest of church policies. Few believed this explanation, but fewer still could offer alternatives that didn't venture into the realm of the fantastic. The 4 remaining sisters were relocated to different convents across the state. St. Agnes was closed temporarily and then permanently, becoming another empty building on Blackwood's landscape of abandonment. For nearly 20 years, the convent stood empty, its gradual decay a monument to unsolved mystery. Until 2008, when the diocese finally sold the property to developers planning to convert it into a boutique hotel, and construction crews made a discovery that would reopen wounds long thought healed. The discovery came on a rainy Tuesday in March 2008. A construction worker named Daniel Reeves was assessing the chapel floor for renovation when his equipment detected an anomaly beneath the altar. The reading didn't make sense, he explained to local reporter Sarah Jenkins. According to our ground-penetrating radar, there was a space below, but nothing like that appeared in any of the building plans. Initial excavation revealed a trapdoor made of stone that matched the chapel floor perfectly, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. The seams had been sealed with a mixture of beeswax and another substance that laboratory tests would later identify as human blood. Beneath the door lay a narrow spiral staircase, its stone steps worn smooth from use, descending into darkness. What the construction crew found at the bottom would transform a missing persons case into something far more disturbing. A tunnel, approximately 6 feet high and 4 feet wide, extended from beneath the chapel toward the surrounding forest. The walls were lined with a peculiar black stone, unlike anything in the local quarries. Most unsettling were the symbols carved at regular intervals, designs that combined Christian iconography with something older, something that made several workers refuse to return to the site. Police were called immediately. The property was cordoned off, and the FBI's cold case unit arrived within days. Agent Diana Foster, who specialized in religious cult activities, led the investigation. "What we found wasn't constructed in 1989, she noted in her preliminary report. This tunnel system appears to be significantly older than the convent itself, possibly predating European settlement in the area." The tunnel extended for nearly half a mile, eventually opening into a chamber roughly 30 feet in diameter. The room contained 8 stone chairs arranged in a circle facing inward. In the center stood a pedestal holding a metal box that had been sealed with the same wax-blood mixture. The contents of this box remained classified to this day, but leaked reports suggest it contained documents dating back to the founding of the convent and journal entries written by Mother Superior Catherine in the weeks before the disappearance. As investigators followed the tunnel further, they discovered it branched into 3 separate passages. The left passage had collapsed decades earlier. The right led to a dead end, where the wall showed signs of recent excavation, but it was the central passage that yielded the most disturbing discovery. A small room containing personal effects belonging to the missing nuns, rosaries, eyeglasses, a diabetes medication kit belonging to Sister Agnes Walsh, arranged in a precise pattern on the floor. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, undisturbed for nearly 20 years. What wasn't found in the tunnels proved equally significant. No bodies, no signs of violence, no indication of where 8 women might have gone after entering this subterranean labyrinth. The only exit besides the chapel entrance was a narrow shaft that emerged in the woods nearly a mile from the convent. This exit had been concealed beneath a large rock formation that would have been impossible for the women to move from the inside. As news of the discovery spread, Blackwood found itself once again at the center of unwanted attention. Former residents returned, seeking answers to questions long suppressed. Among them was Thomas Miller, now a geology professor at Penn State, who requested permission to examine the tunnel stone. "This isn't local," he confirmed after testing samples. "This particular mineral composition occurs in only 3 known locations worldwide, none of them in North America." While authorities focused on the physical evidence, journalist Sarah Jenkins began interviewing former residents who had known the missing nuns. A pattern emerged in these conversations, stories of women who had visited the convent in the months before the disappearance and left changed. Marjorie Hewitt had brought her troubled teenage daughter for counseling with Mother Superior. Caroline went in angry, rebellious, she recalled. She came out, compliant, spoke in this flat voice, kept talking about the voices beneath. 3 weeks later, she tried to walk into Blackwood Lake with her pockets full of stones. Other stories followed. A local teacher who resigned after her sessions with Mother Superior, a prominent doctor's wife who became convinced her house was built on unhallowed ground, a college student who withdrew from classes to prepare for what's coming from below. Each woman had spent time alone with Mother Superior in the chapel. None of them had any memory of what transpired during these meetings. As investigators pieced together a timeline, they discovered Mother Superior Catherine had been conducting extensive research into the land's history before the convent's construction. Library records showed she had requested obscure historical documents about Native American settlements in the region, geological surveys from the 1850s, and records from the original land purchased by the diocese. Most tellingly, she had corresponded with archaeologists specializing in pre-Columbian religious practices. Sister Mary, now living in a convent in Pittsburgh, provided crucial testimony when re-interviewed in 2008. Mother Superior found something in the diocesan archives, something about why the convent was built in that specific location. She became obsessed with the chapel floor, spending hours alone there at night. She told us she could hear voices, women's voices coming from below. We thought, her voice faltered. We thought age was affecting her mind. Then Sister Agnes started hearing them too. According to Sister Mary, the 8 nuns who disappeared had formed an inner circle around Mother Superior. They began conducting private ceremonies in the chapel after midnight, rituals not sanctioned by the church. They would lock the doors, but sometimes I could hear them chanting. Not in Latin, not in any language I recognized. When asked why she hadn't shared this information during the original investigation, Sister Mary's response was chilling. Because they made us promise never to speak of it. They said they were going to make contact with something ancient and holy. They said they were chosen. The 4 nuns who remained had been deliberately excluded from the midnight vigil on December 14, 1989. Sister Mary revealed that Mother Superior had left them a letter, discovered the morning after the disappearance, but never shared with authorities. The letter, which Sister Mary had kept hidden for nearly 20 years, contained only one sentence. What sleeps beneath must never fully awaken. The most compelling testimony came from Eleanor Pierce, a former nurse who had grown up in Blackwood and returned to care for her ailing mother in late 1989. During her interview with Agent Foster, she revealed that she had encountered Sister Agnes in town 3 days before the disappearance. Her eyes were different, dilated despite the bright daylight. She grabbed my arm and said they had been chosen as vessels for what waits below. When I asked what she meant, she just smiled and said, "We will be the first to transform." As investigators continued to search the tunnel system, they discovered evidence of recent habitation. Food wrappers dated 2006, modern battery-powered lanterns, and a digital voice recorder. The recorder contained hours of silence interrupted by periodic whispering and multiple voices, too distorted for voice recognition software to analyze effectively. The final recording, time-stamped just 2 weeks before the construction crew's discovery, contained a single clear sentence in what experts identified as Mother Superior Catherine's voice. "They're coming to open the door. We must move deeper." The investigation took a dramatic turn when construction was temporarily halted to allow for a more thorough archaeological assessment. Dr. Elaine Winters, a specialist in historical architecture, noted that the tunnel system appeared to incorporate elements from at least 3 distinct time periods. The deepest sections showed characteristics of pre-colonial Native American construction, while middle sections aligned with early 19th century techniques. Most disturbing were the newest sections, areas where the original tunnel had been expanded and reinforced with modern materials. "Someone has been maintaining and extending this system for centuries," Dr. Winters concluded. And based on the tool marks and construction methods, the most recent work was done within the last 30 years, some of it possibly as recently as 2007. When investigators consulted local historical records, they discovered that the land where St. Agnes stood had a troubled history long before the convent's construction. The Lenape people had considered the area sacred but forbidden, a place where, according to their oral traditions, the membrane between worlds grows thin. Early European settlers avoided the hill entirely until the Catholic Church purchased the property in 1870 specifically to build the convent. Church records, reluctantly released by the diocese after considerable legal pressure, revealed that the convent's true purpose had never been solely religious. St. Agnes was built as a seal, a spiritual guardrail over what one 19th century priest described as a door that must remain closed. The original architect's notes discovered in the diocesan archives included unusual specifications for the chapel floor, multiple layers of stone reinforced with iron, laid over a foundation blessed by 7 priests. As the FBI's investigation progressed, they sought out Rachel Holbrook, the sole surviving relative of Mother Superior Catherine. Living in a small apartment in Pittsburgh, the 78-year-old woman initially refused to speak with authorities. When Agent Foster finally gained her trust, Rachel shared a family secret. Catherine had joined the order after experiencing visions as a young woman. Visions of an underground chamber where women from across time gathered to receive wisdom from the depths. She believed she was continuing a tradition thousands of years old, Rachel explained, showing Agent Foster a letter Catherine had sent her just 1 week before the disappearance. She said that throughout history, certain women had been called to serve as listeners who could hear voices from deep within the earth. She believed these were the voices of ancient female prophets who had discovered something so profound that they had willingly sealed themselves away to protect and commune with it. The letter, now a key piece of evidence, contained a disturbing passage. What sleeps beneath the chapel is awakening after centuries of dormancy. The others have heard it too now. Soon we will join our sisters from across the ages in the deepest chamber. If we don't return, don't mourn us. We are not ending our lives, we are transcending them. Meanwhile, forensic analysis of the chamber with the 8 stone chairs revealed microscopic evidence that troubled investigators. Each chair contained trace DNA matching the missing nuns, but also showed signs of much older organic material. More perplexing were the dating results. The chairs themselves were carved from stone at least 2,000 years old, yet showed evidence of continuous use throughout the centuries. As the investigation entered its 3rd month, Jessica Winters, a graduate student in anthropology, assisting Dr. Elaine Winters, no relation, made a startling connection. Historical records from 6 other religious sites across Europe and South America described identical disappearances. Women vanishing from sealed rooms, tunnels discovered years later, and stone chambers with the same distinctive symbols. The most recent had occurred in 1967 at a monastery in southern France. The oldest dated back to 1732 in Peru. In each case, the number of missing women was 8. Local resident Meredith Collins, who had been a student at St. Agnes School in the 1980s, came forward with her own account. As a 12-year-old, she had accidentally encountered Mother Superior Catherine in the woods behind the convent. She was kneeling before what I now know was the hidden tunnel exit, placing strange markers in a circle. When she saw me, she wasn't angry. She took my hand and said, "We've been waiting for centuries. Each generation of listeners brings us closer to understanding. Someday, when you're older, you might hear them too." In June 2008, the investigation faced its most significant setback when a sudden underground collapse rendered much of the tunnel system inaccessible. Engineers brought in to assess the damage reported that the collapse appeared suspiciously deliberate, as if someone had strategically weakened key structural supports. By the time excavation equipment could be brought in, the remaining tunnels had flooded from a previously unknown underground spring. Before the flooding, however, Agent Foster had managed to explore what she believed was the newest tunnel extension, a passage that had been actively excavated within the previous year. At its end, she discovered a wall of freshly disturbed earth and, embedded within it, a small leather-bound journal. The journal, determined to belong to Sister Agnes, contained entries dating from 1987 to December 13, 1989, the day before the disappearance. The final entry read, "Mother Superior says the time has come. The others who came before us left markers, maps to guide us to the deepest chamber. What they found there has been waiting patiently for new vessels, new voices to carry its message forward. Tomorrow night, we cross the threshold that separates ordinary existence from eternal communion. We will join the listeners from 1967, from 1898, from 1732, and all those who came before. Mother says once we reach the final chamber, we will exist in all times simultaneously. I am frightened but resolved. We have been chosen." The investigation officially concluded in November 2008, with the 8 nuns formally declared deceased despite the absence of bodies. The official report cited accidental death due to tunnel collapse as the most likely explanation, suggesting that the women had discovered the tunnel and, while exploring it, become trapped by a structural failure. The report made no attempt to explain the tunnel's existence, its apparent age, or the considerable evidence of recent habitation and expansion. Dr. Thomas Miller, however, continued his own investigation. In 2015, he published a controversial paper documenting a pattern of unusual geological readings beneath the former convent site. Readings that suggested the known tunnel system was merely a small branch of something much larger and deeper. His requests for funding to conduct further research were unanimously denied. The property remained abandoned after the investigation, the development company having withdrawn their plans following multiple accidents and equipment failures during attempted construction. The diocese, citing potential safety hazards, had the chapel demolished and the entrance to the tunnel system filled with concrete in 2010. A simple memorial garden now marks the site where St. Agnes once stood, with 8 stone benches arranged in a circle, an unconscious echo of the chamber below. In 2019, 30 years after the disappearance, Sarah Jenkins returned to Blackwood to follow up on her original reporting. Most residents refused to discuss the incident, but Eleanor Pierce, now in her 70s, shared one final detail she had withheld from investigators. The day after they vanished, I was walking in the woods behind the convent. It was snowing lightly. I saw footprints leading away from the hill, 8 sets of barefoot prints in the snow. They continued for about 50 yards and then simply stopped, as if the women had walked that far, and then risen. The convent grounds remain undeveloped to this day. Locals avoid the area, particularly after dark. Some claim to hear whispering on quiet nights. Women's voices engaged in conversations just below the threshold of comprehension. Others report seeing lights beneath the ground, visible only from certain angles and only during the winter solstice. The last person to openly investigate was Jessica Winters, who had become obsessed with the connection between the Blackwood disappearance and similar historical incidents. In 2021, she was granted permission to conduct ground-penetrating radar surveys of the area surrounding the former convent. 3 days into her research, her equipment detected what appeared to be a vast chamber nearly 300 feet beneath the surface, far deeper than the original tunnel system. Before she could investigate further, her funding was abruptly withdrawn. Her appeals to continue were denied by university officials who cited safety concerns. In her final blog post before abandoning her research, Winters wrote, "What happened at St. Agnes wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a continuous tradition stretching back millennia. Women who heard voices from the depths and answered their call. The tunnel isn't just a physical structure, it's a passageway between worlds." The 8 nuns who vanished in 1989 didn't die, they transcended, joining a lineage of listeners who discovered that beneath the surface of our reality lies something ancient and patient, something that communicates only with those willing to descend and truly hear. The truth about what lies beneath St. Agnes may never be fully known. The tunnel has been sealed, the records classified, the witnesses scattered. But in Blackwood, residents still occasionally report seeing 8 women in outdated nuns' habits walking the perimeter of the former convent grounds just before dawn, their feet hovering slightly above the ground, their eyes reflecting a light that seems to come from below rather than above. They never speak, never acknowledge observers. They simply complete their circuit, and then, one by one, descend into solid earth, as if passing through a doorway, visible only to them. When humanity abandons its connection to the mysteries beneath the surface, we create a different kind of darkness, the shadow of willful ignorance, more dangerous than any tunnel's depths.